Hi all, welcome to my channel Artymeetscrafty. In this video, let us learn more 25 patterns. Now let us start. For the first pattern, draw the baseline, leaving it one grid gap, draw a small arc and the bigger arc. Then draw round petal patterns so that it creates a flower petal pattern. Continue doing the same. Then draw the upper baseline. Then draw the same flower petal pattern as shown in the video. Now shade the inner arc. Next, shade the gap area. For the second pattern, draw the arcs spread across two grids. Then draw the inner arc and the baseline. Now draw one more small arc. Add in small circles as shown. Now draw one more inner arc and divide it into two halves and draw diagonal lines as shown. For the third pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally, and then draw the inner line as well as the base line. Now draw one more petal inside the pointed petals and draw the inner line as well, and also a small arc within it. Then draw the flower petal pattern as shown and shade the gap area. And here draw round petal pattern and shade the gap area as shown in the video. For the fourth pattern, draw the pointed petal spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally. Then draw the inner line. Draw 2 more pointed petals inside this pattern. Now draw the base line. Now add few lines. Now add the circles. Now draw one more pointed petal. Next, draw 3 petals inside this and shade the gap area as shown in the video. For the fifth pattern, draw pointed petal pattern spread across 2 grids horizontally and 3 grids vertically. Then leave some gap of 2 grids. Then draw the same. And then draw the baseline as well as the inner line. Now, in the middle, draw pointed petals spread across 2 grids vertically as well as horizontally and split it into 2 parts. draw diagonal lines as shown. Now, here draw the parsley pattern and add few petals as well as a small circle and shade the gap area. Inside this parsley pattern, draw triangle-like shape and draw some lines. Now for the sixth pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally. Then make arcs as shown and draw the inner line for the same. Now draw a circle and add 3 petals to it. To the corner area, draw 2 arcs and also draw 4 petal patterns and also draw the baseline. Now add a dot and a line to each flower petal. Now shade the gap areas as shown in the video. Now for the seventh pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally and also draw the inner line. Now divide it into 2 halves and also add 2 arcs and shade the smallest arc. Here draw 4 petal pattern and shade the gap area and also add a dot and a line as shown in the video. Now draw some small circles as shown in the video. Now draw one more pointed petal from the middle of the 2 pointed petals and also draw the zigzag pattern and shade the gap area as shown in the video. Now moving on to the eighth pattern, draw the pointed petal pattern spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally and also draw the inner line for the same. Now leaving a grid gap, draw a arc that touches the inner line on the other side and also draw the one more arc. Now in this gap, draw circles. Now from here, draw one more small arc that touches the grid with one grid gap. Draw the inner line for the same. Now draw circles and fill in the gap area. Draw a baseline and add a circle inside and one more arc and also some petals and shade the gap area. Now add circle inside a circle. For the ninth pattern, draw a pointed petal spread across 3 grids horizontally and 4 grids vertically. Now draw one more pointed petal in this pattern, leaving one grid area on both the sides. Now draw the inner line for both the pointed petal pattern. Now in this gap, draw lotus flower pattern. Draw the baseline and shade the gap as shown in the video. Now inside this small pointed petal, divide it into two halves. Then draw parsley pattern on both the sides facing opposite to each other and also add diagonal lines on the top. And inside the parsley pattern, draw a dot and a straight line. For the 10th pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally. Draw the inner line also. Now divide the pointed petal into two halves and also draw the base line. Now for the first half, draw the zigzag lines, add diagonal lines to it as shown in the video. For the next half, draw a spiral along with the arc, add flower petals to it, a circle on the top and shade the gap area. Let us move on to the 11th pattern. Draw the pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally and also draw the inner line. Now add the base line. Now draw the parsley pattern from one of the corner of the grid and do the same for the next corner also. Then add arc. Inside the arc, draw some lines. In this gap area, draw a circle and also draw 5 petals of flowers as shown and shade the gap area. Now below this pattern, leaving a grid area, draw a baseline. Also draw round shaped petals inside it and shade the gap area. Now draw the inner line and also add the straight lines as shown in the video. Now let us move on to the 12th pattern. Now draw round petal pattern spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally and also add the inner line as well as the base line. Now draw round petal pattern leaving one grid gap from both the corners. Also add the inner line. Now add round petal patterns in the gap as shown. In the middle of the round petal pattern, add a circle and shade the gap area. Now, in the small round petal pattern, divide it into two halves. In the first half, draw some diagonal line. In the next half, draw 3 petals and shade the gap area. Now here draw inner line. Now add dot underline. For the 13th pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally and draw the inner line. Divide it into 2 halves. Now draw the spiral opposite to each other as shown in the video. Then add 2 long curved petals on each side and also shade the gap area. Now draw the baseline. Now inside these petals add some thin lines. Now draw a baseline leaving a gap of 1 grid and also draw the inner lines. Now add in spirals to it. In between these 2 pointed petals, draw a pointed petal. Now add 3 flower petals, then shade the gap area and also add a dot and a line to it. In the 14th pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 4 grids vertically and 8 grids horizontally. Now draw a baseline as well as the inner line. Now draw parsley pattern in the each corner as shown. Then add 3 petals as shown in the video. Now inside this parsley pattern, draw an arc and add the inner line. Now add small random circles in it. Here, draw a circle and add flower petal patterns as shown and shade the gap area and also add a dot and a straight line as shown in the video. Now let us move on to the 15th pattern. Now draw a round petal pattern spread across 2 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally. Now draw the baseline as well as the inner line. Now draw a round petal pattern as well as the inner line inside this round petal pattern. In between this gap area, draw U pattern. Now fill in the gap area. Now draw petals inside this and shade the gap area. Now add small lines within this U shape as shown in the video. And also add circles as shown in the video. Now draw a baseline as well as the inner line as shown. Then add some circles. Add one more circle within this circle and shade it. Now let us move on to the 16th pattern. Draw pointed petal pattern spread across 2 grids. Draw a baseline as well as the other line, leaving a gap of 1 grid. Now draw spirals opposite to each other as shown. In between these spirals, draw a circle and shade it. Now add inner line to the pointed petals. In the middle, add two parallel lines. Now draw two spirals and a circle as shown. Add diagonal lines. Now add small circles inside the parallel lines. Add diagonal line and a dot as shown in the video. Then fill in the gap area. In between these pointed petals, add more pointed petals and a dot as well as the straight line. Now let us move on to 17th pattern. Draw a baseline and draw pointed petals spread across two grids. Draw pointed petals in between these two pointed petals and also draw the inner line. Here in this pointed petals, draw some horizontal lines, then draw some vertical lines. This forms mini squares. Now shade the alternate square. In the above pointed petal pattern, divide it into two halves, then draw parsley pattern in the first half and turn the paper around and draw the parsley pattern adding a circle in it. Now add 3 flower petal pattern and also shade the gap area. Now for the 18th pattern, draw the baseline, then draw the pointed petals spread across two grids. In between these pointed petals, draw pointed petals. Then add inner line for the same. Here, draw one more pointed petals and also the inner line. In the below pointed petal, draw arc opposite to each other and in the intersection of each and every arc, mark a dot on it. In the above pointed petals, divide it into two halves and then draw diagonal lines. Here, draw round petal pattern and also the inner line and then shade it. Now for the 19th pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 4 grids vertically and 8 grids horizontally. Draw the baseline as well as the inner line for the same. Now at the tip, draw parsley pattern opposite to each other, and inside the parsley pattern, draw a triangle and then shade it. In between these two parsley patterns, draw a circle, then draw lotus flower pattern. Now at the corner, draw parsley pattern in it, and then draw a arc, then shade it. Here, draw the patterns as shown in the video. For the 20th pattern, draw the baseline, then draw the pointed petals spread across 2 grids. In between these pointed petals, draw pointed petals. Then add inner line for the same. Then divide the pointed petals into 2 halves. For the below pointed petals, draw 2 arcs and shade the smaller arc. Then draw 3 petals as shown. For the upper arc, draw 3 petals as shown in the video, then shade it. Now add few lines inside this pattern. For the 21st pattern, draw the baseline, then draw the pointed petals spread across 3 grids vertically and 4 grids horizontally, and draw the inner line. In between these 2 pointed petals, draw one more pointed petal. Now draw parsley pattern at the corner facing each other and add a circle inside it. In between these parsley pattern, draw a circle and add in lotus flower pattern. Shade the gap area. Now in between the lotus flower petal pattern, draw circles and shade the gap area. Then add a dot underline. Now here draw a inner line, then the parsley pattern, then above it draw one more arc and few straight lines. Then shade the gap area as shown. For 22nd pattern, draw pointed petals spread across 4 grids vertically and 8 grids horizontally. Draw the baseline as well as the inner line for the same. Now draw one more pointed petal as well as the inner line for the same. Now draw petal-like structure on both the side as shown in the video. Shade the gap area. Now draw a dot underline. Draw one more pointed petal under inner line. In this gap area, draw round petal pattern as well as a circle in between them. Now shade the gap area. Here in the small pointed petal, divide it into two halves, then draw vertical lines as well as the horizontal lines as shown. Now let us move on to the 23rd pattern. Now draw the baseline. Next, draw a flat round petal pattern spread across 4 grids vertically as well as horizontally. Then draw the inner line for the same. Curved petal patterns. Then also draw the inner line. Inside this, draw 3 curved petals and shade the rest of the area. Now, in between these two, draw 3 curved lines and shade the one in the middle. Then, draw a pointed petal pattern. Draw the inner line. Then, draw the flower petal pattern as shown in the video. Now draw petal as shown in the video. Then draw spirals on both the sides and shade the rest of the area as shown in the video. Now let us move on to the 24th pattern. Now draw pointed petals spread across 4 grids on both the sides. Then draw the baseline as well as the inner line to it. Now draw the arcs and the inner arc. Then draw the spiral. Then add flower petals to it and shade the gap area. Now draw the parsley pattern on the top. Now add 3 petals on it. Then shade the gap areas as shown. Then also add a dot and a line as shown. Now let us move on to the 25th pattern. Draw a baseline and draw pointed petals spread across 2 grids. Draw pointed petals in between these 2 pointed petals and also draw the inner line. Now divide it into 2 halves. In the first half, draw the parsley pattern and a circle over it. Now draw 3 lotus flower pattern as shown in the video. Then shade the gap area. Now draw parsley pattern opposite to each other and draw 3 petals over it. Next, draw a dot and a straight line as shown in the video. By this, we have completed our 25 patterns of mandala. Thank you for watching. Meet you all in my next video. Until then, this is Ashu Srini signing off.